Let's talk about El Gigante. Where Cactus Jack is out, El Gigante is in, and Meltzer would report that he's booked to appear on several shows starting in just a few days. But Meltzer doesn't know if that's just to walk out or actually work. But he does know he's going to wrestle a match at the Omni on June the 16th against his trainer, the Cuban Assassin. He says, El Gigante is perfecting a claw hold, and he writes, "I'm not kidding. I could be totally off base on this one. However, after seeing him in DC, he has potential as an attraction, but he looked worse than lost." He says if they start running him around too soon, he'll flop. And the best thing they can do is just take their time and make him an attraction. And he even suggests try to send him to some different territories or Japan to learn, but that's clearly not what they're going to go with. And you've told the story about the first time you met El Gigante, but tell it again for those of us who maybe haven't heard it before.
Oh, he was in a CNN center at the food court. And, I don't remember who I was having lunch with, maybe Keith Mitchell or anyway, we went back and told the, powers that be, who is that big son of a bitch running around with Stan Kasdan? Stan Kasdan was the GM of the Hawks and the Braves simultaneously. Sharp guy. So anyway, come to find out, that Jorge Gonzalez was, he was a basketball player, an average basketball player at best, and that might be being kind. And so we found out that he was a basketball player, and they were going to cut him. His tryout was more for publicity than anything else. On the off chance he might have some defensive skills or being able to play in the low block or whatever at 7 feet 6 or 7. But he had no mobility whatsoever. His massive feet were virtually immobile. One to pick up whichever one you want there. And so, of course, everybody's light bulb goes off. Oh my God, we'll create our own Andre. But to create your own Andre, you got to have an Andre-like mindset, or Andre like to drink all night and hang with the guys and man's man. George is not a partier. George is the most excitement I ever saw from George was when he danced with Missy Hyatt at some show we did in Arizona, some pay-per-view we did, and Dusty and myself, Missy, camera crew, and George were there, and it was supposed to show produce his human side of George. George he's a freak of nature, but he's a common guy type thing, blah, blah, blah. And he's supposed to be dancing with Missy. And he didn't even do that well, God bless him. So he put his heart and soul in dancing with her. George liked Missy, but he just didn't have a lot of talent, no charisma, nicest guy in the world. And ironically, when he got out of the business and he went back home, he was broke. And I remember Harvey Whippleman, Bruno Lauer, used to send him money. It was sad because he's taking care of his whole family. It was a sad story how it all ended. He wasn't prepared for his wealth, and therefore he didn't last long. So the nice guy, but we did not train him correctly. We will never know how good El Gigante could have been because his training was mishandled from the very first day. And it was always a rush job. Well, we're going to book him in South Carolina in 6 weeks. Oh, you got to be shitting me. South Carolina can wait, in all due respect to South Carolina. But if we had done what Meltzer suggested in a large sense, Andre worked 7 years or something before he ever wrestled in North America.
What did you think of the Cuban Assassin as a trainer? You're not necessarily disparaging him as the trainer.
Oh, no, absolutely not. But you can't. No, Dave Sierra is a hell of a trainer, and a solid, fundamentally sound guy still is. But here you're looking at a guy that has absolutely no background, no fandom, no I followed this as a kid deal. This is all I've ever wanted to be deal. He didn't know come here from Sikkim about pro wrestling. I had the distinct honor of helping him in promo class, and I don't know that even the great Dusty Rhodes could have solved this one. So we go with all these promos, and you say this, and you got to have this thought. Well, whatever. I'm trying to get him to speak from his heart, but he don't know what to say.
Right.
So you got to here, say these three things. So at the end of the day, here's what we got. We worked probably 3 hours. Here's what we got. In 3, 2, Ric Flair, I kill you.
Doesn't get old. Doesn't get old.
Ric Flair, I kill you. Okay, George, that's it. Cut. So that's it. That's all we got. I said, what else? I kill him. Okay. How about a funeral? Come on, give me something, George. Help us out here.
Well, there was a funeral after the June 6th show in Columbia, South Carolina. It seems like you guys tried to kill the town. Originally, it's Flair versus JYD on top. But they find out that JYD booked his own indie booking in his hometown of North Carolina there. So they let him out of the South Carolina show. I don't know why that would happen, but then they asked Lex Luger, who had started back on June 1st, to step in and take his place in the main event. But Luger says, nope, I was given the night off to see my son's basketball game and I'm not coming. So he wrestles Ricky Morton on top instead. Now, that was probably the best match of the three.
Yeah. I started to say part of the best match of the night.
Boy, this is the inmates running the asylum though, is it not? No, I got a basketball game, and no, I got an indie booking that pays me more money. I'm going to go do that.
Ole didn't care. He was there getting a paycheck. He had the inmates had taken over the asylum, and they weren't, and all the inmates weren't even smart inmates. They were sitting on the old bird nest on the ground thing, working with Turner. If they could just put a little extra work in and get over and take a bigger hand in their own future and how they execute their characters, blah, blah, blah. But that didn't happen there. Morale was absolutely deplorable. It was not a fun place to work. But man, there's some great talent there. When we go back, as we look through this show, Jesus Christ Almighty, it really was a who's who, but they weren't used correctly, as we will prove.
Let's talk a little bit about the big takeaway from that show on June the 6th, though, in South Carolina. The last match on the card is the Midnight Express taking on Tom Zink and Brian Pillman. Putting Midnight on top, that makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe what makes a little less sense is a ringside fan got out of hand and actually punches Jim Cornette in the nose. And in the process bloodies his nose. Well, you can guess what happens next. Jim Cornette hit the fan several times.
God, fat bastards.
So yeah, Cornette hits the guy in the face several times with his racket. And the guy, as Meltzer would write, is, well, let me just read it here. Who, as it turned out, is semi-retarded several times in the face with his tennis racket. The incident made some press in the area. So you have a special needs fan who's gotten a little overly excited, shall we say, and as a result punches Jim Cornette, and Cornette ain't having it. He probably doesn't know that this is a special needs fan and just reacts.
Oh, no. He would have known.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you get those. He came from when Cornette had the Midnight Express red hot in the Mid-South. There were people there that legitimately, and this is not me embellishing, or it's the old timer talking wrestling again. He's old, and everybody should wear black tights and wool boots or some shit, whatever. Corny has been assaulted so many times in the Mid-South because he carried heat. His team had heat. They didn't get beat every week. And so Watts knew how to book them.
Right.
And he let Cornette be Cornette. So, with the exception where he wanted to slip one by me one time. I think I'm missing this. His line was, "She had the prettiest teeth I ever come across." Cut. You're not going to say that. What? Don't act innocent. It ain't happening. But he was so when you get in that environment and it's so unpredictable, you don't know who's got a knife, who's got anything. It's not like now where they go through metal detectors.
Right.
Shit. So it's scary sometimes. So I guarantee you he didn't know who that kid was, had special needs and had this handicap. So, but hey, you don't hear about this anymore. we don't have to worry about this anymore hardly, because I don't hear of any heels getting assaulted, because they're men playing the roles of heels instead of being heels. Big difference.
Let's move on here and talk about some other news that may surprise a lot of people. Meltzer would write that Ric Flair met with the president, George Bush, this prior Wednesday night at a fundraiser for Senator Jesse Helms in Charlotte. Apparently Flair was requested by the president not only to be in attendance at the dinner, but to sit at the head table with all the local leading politicians. And when Bush introduced Flair to the audience, North Carolina Governor Jim Martin held up 4 fingers and Flair got a pretty big pop. This is pretty crazy, is it not?
Yeah, it's great. It's just, if there hadn't been so much uncertainty, out of control egos, and insecurities in that entire division, that publicity would have been gold. It should have been gold. And then when you find out that, TBS is not going to allow it to air because of some weak ass political reason, or some executive in a blue jacket and a white shirt and a red tie whose nuts wouldn't fit into a thimble, they'll squash it, while they're not understanding that that's going to make Ric Flair a much bigger star, because everybody knows who George Bush is.
Now, in my report from Meltzer, he's saying that the White House wouldn't allow TBS to use the footage because it made it look like the president was endorsing Flair. And of course, Flair
endorsing for what? He's not running for anything, is he?
Well, I think it just means, Flair had a reputation even back here in 89 and 90, did he not? That he could be, a little wild. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.